Hello. I said I was going to be talking about D&D, and here we are. Unfortunately, I'm not quite done with the project I've been working on. However, I still have enough to kind of talk about some D&D hot takes. More like lukewarm, I suppose. It's not like any of these are really special. I did get some extra opinions from some friends, which I will throw in after these main points. But for the most part, most of these are probably going to be pretty lukewarm. I should mention that my current experience with D&D is not very vast. I have one session that I had DM'd. I am a player in a single campaign that hasn't gone on for too long so far. I am an avid consumer of DM ideas, tips, and content, and an occasional Reddit horror story tourist. No, not on Reddit itself, just the horror video compilations, if you want to call it that. But without further delay, let's get into it. Starting off strong, don't use alignment charts. It's a decent way to kind of build a character in terms of getting an idea going, but it shouldn't be used for any strict kind of character guideline. Regarding with people that you know whenever you're playing with them, if whoever's playing is completely new to the game, they're mostly going to focus on the mechanics of combat if your games are combat heavy. However, if you are the DM or the DM that you're playing with is making a roleplay heavier one, then they might tend to lean towards their current personality if they haven't consumed a lot of D&D content and gotten some kind of ideas from there. The other point in terms of new players is that it's hard to use, so if they are overly reliant on it, it would kind of box them into a certain playstyle. While I personally have not played with random people on the internet, I would consider those random people on the internet friends, but for those who are interested in trying to recruit random strangers from the internet, personally, I feel like alignment charts are kind of like a red flag in terms of it's kind of an excuse to be able to say it's what my character would do for every NPC murdered, whatever MacGuffin is broken, or every player versus player is initiated. And when it comes to DMs, while it gives an idea for how monsters would act in response to things, after a certain point of time of experience, it's probably better to start branching out and kind of giving some monsters a little bit of depth, especially if you're playing with more versed characters. Next point, combat, specifically 1 versus X, XVX, and YVX. I'll explain those in a minute. 1VX, this is essentially your party versus a single enemy. Very simple. This works for boss fights until it stops working for boss fights. It's kind of hard to balance. You can easily turn an enemy into a damage sponge or make them really hard to hit. And it kind of gets boring after a couple of turns. They're easy to lock into one place, so if you want to have them run away and be a reoccurring villain, they might kind of get locked down and beaten up. So, something to be very careful about. And then at the end, it's kind of limited in terms of their attack options. A lot of monsters that I've seen might have multi-attack, which lets them take 2 attacks, obviously. But even then, depending on the amount of players, this is not an incredible amount if you want to balance out damage, because if it's only 2 attacks per turn, but you have a party of 4, then more than likely those hits are going to be packing. XVX, or having the same amount of enemies as your party, a bit more potential for dynamic positioning in the map. There's more potential for planning if you give your players the opportunity, or if you are given the opportunity if you are a player. There's potential for, well, more reasonable potential for players to actually struggle or lose a fight. The problem is, if you handle each creature individually, it can be very time consuming trying to plan out all their actions. Uh, Obviously, there are monster types that are considered swarms, which in a way is multiple, but it's still technically a single entity, I suppose. And then YVX, that would be the case of more enemies than there are players in the party. It could be by 1, it could be by 10. It's up to the DM and how they handle it, or the players and how many guards they attract. But in any case, the same pros as an even fight, but with worse cons when it comes to time consuming, and the potential to lose, I suppose. But if the DM wants the players to suffer for whatever reason, I suppose that is the option to go with. The good thing about this, though, is having these big fights can kind of work well for set pieces and story moments. If you want a narrative thing to occur where you're not really expected to fight, maybe you're expected to run away, or maybe there's a different goal. That's a different topic. There's already plenty of videos on different types of combat goals that I've seen. So, I mean, you could just look up combat tips and you'll probably find any. And then the last point for these rather lukewarm takes is for player expectations and DM communication. For DMs, be clear about what's to be expected over the course of the game. Is character death a real threat? Hard and punishing encounters with dice stacked against you? And how frequent will combat or roleplay encounters be? You want to let your players know this beforehand so that they can kind of prep for it. Because if, let's say it's a new player, they want to play a barbarian, however, the campaign or one shot, whatever you're making, is more on the roleplay side. Well, they might struggle if they don't really know how to roleplay it well. Obviously, there's the trope of the barbarian being dumb, and that works for long enough, but give them an opportunity to test the waters. For the player's side, talk to your DM. This is in regards of the game itself, scheduling. Do your best to help them out as well. They've got a lot on their plate. Anyway, that's it for the lukewarm takes that I had scribbled down. I did ask a couple of questions to a couple people I know to see what their D&D hot takes were, and I'll read a couple of them here. Despite some bias on my side, the Mercer effect is horrible for people looking to get into D&D. And if you don't know what that is, it's the expectation that all DMs will be like Matt Mercer in the way that they do things, and that all games will run like a Critical Role campaign. Get a lot of friends who've gotten into D&D because of Critical Role to some degree, and then decided they hated it because the DM doesn't know what they're doing, even though most of the games do not run like Critical Role at all. This is coming from someone who loves Matt Mercer's style of DMing and narrative style of Critical Role campaigns too. Halflings suck and Dark Vision is pointless. I don't know. Hey, really? Is that? I guess my lukewarm take is that the actual combat system doesn't matter nearly as much as making a story, and it seems pretty obvious D&D was intended as a nerdy RP activity. Limiting spells to 1 per turn is bullshit, but absolutely necessary. Spells are scaled all out of whack and would need a complete rebalance to make multicasting fair. And there you have it, the absolute spiciest of lukewarm takes that you can find absolutely anywhere. But before I end the video, I want to kind of discuss a little bit of what I got planned for other D&D type of content. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I've been working on a little project. I've been making my own set of homebrew monsters that I kind of want to try out. Once I have them completed, I'll probably talk about them a bit and have a video talking about them. But I also am DMing a short session, which I intend to also upload my side of the game a little bit later, since I don't want to reveal anything to my players early on if they do happen to see it. But in any case, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully you'll stick around to see what's in store.